we are from Group 6 and we are going to discuss about education, science, and technology. Our group consists of me, Brian, Reggy, Cahya, Jhon, and Michael.
First thing first is the basic concept. Education, science, and technology are built from a single meaning that bound together and result in a meaningful phrase. Here is each of its definitions. First is education itself refer to the systematic activities with formal process through which specialized teachers transmit skills, knowledge, and anything values to the students. Second is science, which refers to the process of using systematic observations to gain knowledge about physical and social world. And the last is technology, refers to the knowledge, tools, and all the practices that use scientific or other organized knowledge to achieve some practical goal. Let we see from the three measures of social problems, which are the functionalist, the conflict, and the interactionist. First is from the functionalist perspective, education, science, and technology is performing from a functions that contributes to the whole of operations. For example, developing cultural values in people and train people in a specific skill such as doctor or computer programmer. Next is from the conflict perspective. It promotes from a different group that struggle with one another to attain the societal resources they are considered valuable, or it could be increase the social inequality. For example, others who have higher incomes or important political position will have better education and learning institutions. And the last is interactionist perspective. This perspective is focuses more on the social interactions in the school, either in the venues or interactions between teachers and the students. For examples, if teachers doing an evaluation by asking a questions to a specific students, in addition to transmit the skills, it also beneficial for know how well the students have learned. Moreover, technology have associated to keep teachers and the students can have a virtual face-to-face interaction in this pandemic, and teachers still able to do an evaluation by doing an online discussion. The next slide will explain by my friend.
Hello, my name is Reggy and I will be talking about problems in education. First, we have the credentials race. Credentials, as we know it, is a title that we have that represents our educational achievement. For example, undergraduate, bachelor's, master's. For functionalists, they argue that credentialing reflects on the levels and skills needed to do job. However, evidences suggest that the requirement for said credentials are higher than what is actually needed to do the job. For conflict theorists, some groups have a vested interest in placing importance for educational degrees. Why? Because it generates greater demands for educational services. It will also give the need for people who already has the degree to protect their importance and try to restrict competition. Second is tracking. Also called ability grouping, is the clustering of people with the same abilities or students with the same educational goals in the same class. It is done with an assumption that people will do better when classed with people of the same ability. Decisions of tracking is based on students' performance, standardized testing, teachers' judgment, or parent choice. The dangers of tracking is it becomes a label that creates expectation to teachers and students. Research shows that children of lower class and minority are automatically put to lower tracks. Hence, racism and stereotypes may play a part. Third, we have effectiveness. Although some students attend good schools and get an excellent education, other students are definitely failed by the educational system. Students who are especially likely to be failed by the schools are those from low-income families and other special conditions. A person without a high school diploma today confronts virtually insurmountable obstacles in terms of finding social and economic opportunities. Fourth, we have race, ethnicity, and segregation. Schools in the US have high segregation on both social class and race. This results in a number of factors like segregated housing pattern, court decisions that freed school districts from the segregation orders, and indifferent public desirability of integrated schools. Lastly, we have violence. As we know, school violences are infamous in the US. Although for most students, the threat of violence may be less lethal, but it is the daily one that and can cast a pall over the schools, which can destroy the educational environment. Some of the crime and violences in schools are caused by youthful exuberance and routine conflicts as adolescents deal with the difficulties of biological and social maturation. Your society experiences high level of crime, drugs, and gun possession, and schools are mainly vulnerable by it. Thank you.
Hi, it's me Brian. Now I'm going to tell you the problems faced in science and technology. First of all, we have unemployment. Since robots and AI are taking over our jobs to make them more efficient and easier for us, many people are being laid off. According to Oxford Economics, up to 20 million manufacturing jobs worldwide will be lost by robots in 2030. The industry being the most endangered with this issue are mining and manufacturing. Next, we have alienation. Since jobs are now mostly accompanied with machinery, it can be boring, repetitive, and unfulfilling. With this new change, employees would feel alienated or feeling no control over their surroundings. This issue would mostly lead to decline in job satisfaction among employees and workers. Next, we also have digital divide. Digital divide refers to the gap between those who can benefit technology and those who can. Because of this, people may be out of the loop and left behind if they lack in digital and computer skills. Another issue would be loss of control. There always have been the fear of technology to take over our lives. Now, we have grown more and more attached and dependent towards technology, and technology have become more and more complex, that even they can even work on their own. With this comes an issue that this complexity would cause loss of control, since responsibility for technology is so scattered. Another issue is loss of privacy. Most government and big company database, such as Instagram and Google and Facebook, holds our data which might consist of private information online. There's a big chance of abuse by hackers and criminals. Also, inaccurate data can also occur in the database because the machines cannot be completely trusted to do human tasks, such as recording data. Lastly is genetic engineering. Genetic engineering is a process of manipulating genes to alter characteristics into making a better one. This has long become an issue in science and technology because of its ethical and moral issues. Genetic engineering is often looked as playing God by a lot of people. Well, that's all from my part. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is John speaking. Now let's talk about example of Indonesian cases that can be identified from our discussion earlier. Here we have the main theme of the growth of education and technology, which discusses support for innovation of our anak bangsa invention, production by our own inventor, creator hands rather than simply increase the number of imports. Schools and formal education were much less common before the Industrial Revolution than they are today, largely because formal education was not mandatory for an individual to make a significant contribution to society. Technology and education, on which it is centered, become dramatically more complex in industrial societies. Literacy skills are becoming increasingly important in an economy where computers are pervasive as well as basic understanding of mathematics is needed for almost all occupation. Next slide. Take an example, SMK. SMK is a car product assembled by vocational high school student, Sekolah Menengah Kejuruan, in collaboration with domestic institution and industry and several local and national companies. The content of local domestic components ranges from 20% to 80%. a pretty promising number, right? The establishment of the SMK factory is considered as a step from the initial efforts for Indonesian brands to move up to the manufacturing level and build a local automotive industry. However, it is not easy for SMK to compete with others automotive industry that already exist to operating in Indonesia. One big obstacles is the capital factor. And again, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there were only about 30 personnel working for 2 until 3 hours per day, where before the pandemic there were around 200 personnel working in factories. Next slide. Apart from the problems that occur with the SEMCA, the main idea for these sample cases is that our education is already at a point where kesadaran anak bangsa, the, the future awareness of brilliant innovations, of valuable assets of our nation, which become the benchmark, only needs guidance and support from several stakeholders.
Hi, I'm Kashin, and I will talk about the most difficult concept to understand in this chapter. The first one is about development of technology. So in functionalist perspective, it says that the development of technology help people to learn about soft skill, for example, about how to use computer, how to use machine or others, and it helps them to compete in the workforce. In addition, it's also aimed to help people work easier. However, the development in technology is also create another problem, which is structural unemployment. Next, we have credential race. There is a big question about this part where people are demanded to have a higher educational level. Meanwhile, there are several jobs that's not required the workers to have higher educational background. For example, the jobs of blue collar workers. So we are wondering whether it is justified that education is not relevant at some point, or if it's still relevant, at what points is education relevant for all people despite of their future jobs. So that is all from this part. We will continue to the next part. Thank you.
So now is our perspective on education, science, and technology. So education, science, and technology are three things that has relations to reach some goals. Therefore, there are many systems that created by humans to conduct education, science, and technology. Moreover, there are two elements that affects those things, which are times and environment. First, time. In our perspective, education, science, and technology are changing every time based on the needed and quality of the system that they have. For example, long time ago, books are the only things that used to write and put anything that important. But however, nowadays, students can only use their phone or computer to taking notes or others. Next is environment. Environment has two impacts which are positive and negative. Positive environment giving education. Therefore, the technology is being created based on the scientist's knowledge. For example, motorcycle, where it's created by learning from the environment. That to go far, they have to get some that help them, which is motorcycle. Now is the negative. How environment giving bad impact. For example, children recently use handphone until they get hair sighted. Next is recommendation. There are three recommendations. CUAC. Create an education system that makes students feel comfortable in learning, and U is using your knowledge from what you learn to create and to use technology. ACE is apply knowledge that you get to do scientist activities. Next is conclusions. Education is a system that gives knowledge and skill to handle technology and science, which means that three elements are related. Moreover, by having knowledge, then they can use it to operate any technology in the education systems, also in scientist systems. Therefore, every era has its own quality of education, science, and technology. In 19th century, education is not too better than now. Therefore, the technology that they had also not too good. For example, the famous one is Nokia. Other hand, nowadays, because of the education that improved, therefore the technology also improves. One of the example is Gojek, that make people activity is easier. Moreover, all of that is happen because of the research of background knowledge of science. Thank you. That's all from our group.
Now you are at the end of our presentation. Thank you for watching and see you.